GM is off to a rocky start in 2025. First, they screw 877,000 buyers of their trucks with recalls with their L87 engines that have blowing rod bearings. Then, of course, there's another 70,000 recalls for some front reflective parts falling off. Of course, we also know they've had problems with their 5.3 and the 6.2 liter V8 engines and the lifter issues that aren't properly corrected from what I've seen. And a lot of their automatic transmissions continually fail, and there's recalls and all kinds of alleged lawsuits chasing down General Motors for compensation. What's going on? I mean, things aren't looking too good right now either. And now, of course, the current administration is looking at charging a hefty tariffs, that's right, to Canada and Mexico, who are two major countries that manufacture or create and build a lot of the General Motors products. That's going to have a massive impact. As well as we're seeing so much of a problem that even the Ford CEO Farley has mentioned that this is going to blow a hole in the automotive industry. Trucks and cars and SUVs have nowhere to go but up in price. There looks to be no relief in sight, and now with these additional tariffs, it looks to be a huge, ugly, nasty year in 2025. What else is new? General Motors CEO Mary Barra is actually saying that they could probably mitigate up to almost 50% of the additional tariff costs just by some juggling, of course, their business model. A lot of that could be done without deploying additional capital. But very similar to Ford's problem is a lot of these vehicles, they've been relying on building these vehicles in both Mexico and Canada, and that has been saving their bacon. Of course, the chicken tax is another phenomenon that's kept them, of course, isolated from the world market, keeping a lot of the foreign competition out. Well, the chicken tax is being looked at as well, but primarily these tariffs that are being applied to a lot of these vehicles, of course, are being very impactful to both Ford as well as GM. Stellantis is having a problem of their own, but that's for another day. So currently the way it's set up, General Motors is producing a lower cost vehicle as well as a highly profitable pickup truck in Canada. Mexico as well, there's some production in Mexico, both of which are going to have major impacts, ultimately rising driving costs up even further on the price of some of these expensive, outstanding vehicles. We've talked about General Motors and where the prices are going, and they're going up. Of course, we're talking about Cadillac getting into racing, and it's clear that the cost for racing, its cost for tariffs, the cost of designing and manufacturing a lot of these EVs is going up. Nothing is going down. Prices continually to rise. Jim Farley as well advertised that this 25% increase on both steel and aluminum this week also is going to have a major impact. What do you think these vehicles are manufactured from? Steel and aluminum. So drive prices up, 25% tariffs on the Canadian supplied steel and aluminum. What are you going to get? Without foreign competition, without internal ability to manufacture these same products, which currently United States imports a large volume of the steels and aluminums, that's what goes into these vehicles. So that's going to further drive up prices of his vehicles as well. It's not just the direct price of the tariffs on the vehicles themselves, but also in the core products, the materials, a lot of the parts. The supply chain is also going to have a major impact on the price of these vehicles. If you want to make sure that you're getting in the good books with the administration, both General Motors as well as Ford representation had talks with the current leader, Donald Trump, of course, and as well at the inauguration provided a $1 million contribution. And Jim Farley also pointed out that a lot of other companies are not subject to these tariffs. Vehicles that are coming from Toyota as well as Hyundai are vehicles manufacturers from Korea as well that are exempt right now. And that just does not level the playing field, and that doesn't seem to be sitting all that well with the current Ford and General Motors CEOs. And on top of this, General Motors and like a lot of manufacturers pretending like they're doing exceptionally well. But General Motors, we saw stock prices drop by about 8 to 9% here just recently because of the instability in the market. As well as the Cami plant in Ontario where they produce some of their vehicles for General Motors. There's a staffing about 1,300 workers, and actually another almost 80 workers got turfed this week simply because they reduced the number of shifts producing these vehicles. But that's clear indication. Less vehicles, less shifts needed, and less people required to build these vehicles. If they're not selling vehicles, why would you need workers to build them? That's what's going on. And while we're seeing a lot of these sales going up and they're bragging that we're having a great year, they have to. They have to say that they've seen record years. Why? Well, number one, they have to appease the shareholders, so naturally they push for heavy incentives at the year end so they can make their quotas and their numbers, and then they have bragging rights to say, look, year over year we've sold this much. That's because incentives at a higher number than they've ever been. On top of it, people are just choosing to buy less or buying older used vehicles because now the average transaction price for a vehicle these days is about $49,700. That's right, we're finally at about $50K for the average new car vehicle price. Of course, full-size trucks, SUVs, GM is one of the big contributors, so is Ford, as well as Stellantis with Rams and Jeeps, are some of the biggest culprits for producing highly overpriced, high profit margin vehicles. Trucks, SUVs are all some of the big players, and there's less people buying them. Now, on top of this, throw some tariffs on there. Unless a lot of these manufacturers are able to get their manufacturing facilities across the border into the US and do it toot sweet, likely the consumers are going to feel even more pinch. It's bad enough during a cost of living crisis when people can't afford to eat, sleep, or even crap. Now, of course, we're seeing more prices tacked on, taxation, inflation is just went up 3% virtually overnight. Things are getting out of control. We thought things were bad a year, 2 years ago. Who would have thought this is where we'd be? But here we are. People are about to pay more. Could it be as much as 10, 20, 30% more for their vehicles? You wait another year or two, things are going to get downright nasty. And ultimately, in the pursuit of trying to generate more revenue for the US, as well as create more jobs in the US, means that there's going to be some hard times. It feels like there's certainly going to be some pinch points. And with extra taxation, extra tariffs, that's definitely going to shift the dynamics of the whole automotive industry. Trucks alike, as being one of the most popular spaces and genres. Obviously, a lot of manufacturers like the Fords and GMs pretty much gave up the ghost on cars years ago. And really all they sell now are trucks and SUVs. So now with the market shrinking because of their high profit margins, it begs the question, how can they even survive? What does 2025 look like for General Motors, for Ford? It looks like a tough go. And yet, other brands, without even getting into it, Audi, for example, Jaguar, have you heard Audi? They're trying to go upmarket. They're trying to rebrand themselves as well to a more premium brand. Well, I don't know how that's going to work out. Not sure yet how it's working out over Jaguar headquarters. But clearly, this push, this emphasis to transition vehicles to a higher space, to a higher trim level, to a luxury car segment, just means it's pushing more and more people away from affordability. Less people can afford these vehicles. These companies don't care. Remember, these vehicles are just that. They're a commodity. These companies don't care about what they sell. It could be a car, a truck, it could be a widget. The point is, they're selling these vehicles for a profit because it's a business. And so it doesn't matter whether you like cars or trucks, or you feel this is good value or not value. Ultimately, the companies are going to do what makes these companies money. Well, with all that said, be sure to check out those two videos. Where do vehicles go that don't actually sell? As well as what's going on with Ford. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.